On November 14th, the day after recording this podcast, the Arrowsoul Trading Post was broken into. We will be linking the shop's website and social media in the description if you have the capacity to donate or visit the shop. There will also be links to support the other projects discussed in this podcast. Please enjoy.
Yeah, we gon' rise, it's a prophecy. Our time, my life, my line, my choice, my voice. Canada and United Snakes. Turtle Island comeback. This is the break.
Guatzihopa Wahenome Huaca Quakeshashka Hanusta. My name is Jonathan Juarez. I'm from the pueblos of Laguna and Isleta. And I've been with YUCCA for about 3 years now. My role has always kind of jumped around. I've been in policy, but also, more like organizing, and then also on the communication side of things. And this is my first time being on the Yapping with YUCCA podcast. It's a bit of a tongue twister. And yeah, just excited to be here and share space with you all. And excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Cool. Thank you, Yate. My name is Yazh Pending. I'm Dene and Hickory Apache. I am a former fellow with the Center of Native American Youth, as well as formerly associated with YUCCA. I come on and do my advocacy work with them as well when there's time and place, and I love participating. And yeah, thank you all for being here.
Hi, Anin Buju. I'm Gizhigateh Kwe, but people call me Gizzy. And I do a lot of climate protesting back home and try to bring awareness to our MMIW.
Hano El Suta. So good afternoon. My name is Orlando Cruz. I'm from Santa Ana Pueblo, a.k.a. Tamaya. I've been doing a lot of work ever since the whole Standing Rock thing. And after that, when I came home, I started doing some MMIW. I was asked to do some singing for different organizations. And you guys actually invited me out to a couple of events that I went and performed at. And just the whole aspect of when I was out in Standing Rock and what was my purpose, trying to find my purpose. Why am I here? And my purpose was to sing for these people, to help them forget about what was going on over there, because at some points in time over there, it was really crazy. If you guys went up to Standing Rock, people listening to the podcast that have been to Standing Rock know, the shooting of the bullets, the water, the non-portable water. That's what was the crazy part. And they were just hosing us down and freezing temperatures. But, yeah. And a lot of things that came out of it. I made a CD while I was out there, and I came back out and became a published author. So I have a book out. And it's called The Vibe Tribe by Orlando Cruz. And I just, keep continuing. Whenever they ask for my services, I try to be there and help them out.
Oh, thank you so much both for being here and for all of the work that you guys do. I know that it's, all of this, it's the same struggle. There's so many points, we've already talked about that where, this work just intersects. And so thank you for, across climate justice and MMIW and Standing Rock and just all of those different, intersections. I'm really appreciative of your work, but then also getting to have you here and learn from you. Of course. I want to start with, tell me a little bit about your work at the Trading Post, maybe before we dive into some of the heavier topics. Yeah, tell us about Arrowsoul.
So I'm not an owner. Orlando is one of the owners. One of my big things is promoting Indigenous art as a luxury. They wanted to be us for so long and eradicate us and wear us. It was like it's literal fetishization, right? Especially on our women in Two-Spirit. And if people are willing to pay $40K for a Hermes bag, they can pay $500 for a medallion, and to understand that was born out of necessity. Like the seed beads and the trade bead history are something I talk a lot about in my work. And one of my specialties is chevrons. And I like to talk about the history with the French trade. heavy quotes there, trade. They tried to rip us off, but we ended up making something more beautiful from their quote unquote garbage. Same with the ribbons. Ribbon skirts came from that. And so I like to kind of promote that our art deserves to be at the forefront, especially because this is our land. I think that it's high time that the museums are shut down. I think that the museums, I don't know if I can really say what I really feel, but it'd be a real shame if they burnt to the ground. But I think everything needs to be returned, and they should be Indigenous owned, run, led, and operated. Yeah.
At the least,
Yeah.
return it.
Yeah, return it. Like, why do they got bodies? It's freaking weird.
Weird behavior. They want to be weird.
Yeah, it's creepy.
And me as being an owner, well, to me, the whole thing got brought up, I don't know how many years ago. Hey, let's, try and get together. A couple of my friends, bringing up the Standing Rock thing again, that's kind of the reason why I got kind of known. And there was this whole Water is Life thing, and they sent up a bunch of sweaters, shirts, and stuff for everybody that was up there so he could stay warm. And when I came back down here, I finally met the gentleman that was making all these screen prints. And I just so happened to have a drum in my car. And I took it in and I went up to him and I said, hey, do you think we could put that print on my drum? That would be so cool. And he goes, well, yeah, I guess we could try, see what happens. So we went ahead and did that, ever since then, we've been really close friends. They had a store up in Taos for about a year and a half, something like that. Then we decided, why not Albuquerque? Let's open up a spot somewhere that a lot of Indigenous people already know. And believe it or not, the spot that we got, it used to be Red Planet Comic Book Store. It was an Indigenous owned, and I believe Dr. Francis Lee is from Laguna Pueblo. So we got to get that spot, and we started transforming it and just meeting all the different Indigenous artists and, trying to have pop-ups. And there's actually 4 of us that are co-owners right now. There's me, Heck, Saba, and Saba's wife. So, Shauna, yeah. So we're really looking forward to, really doing some things. And if you go into the shop and you look and you see some of the shirts, just you could feel the power from some of them. Like there's one that he made that was called Traditions, but it's a actual a record turntable, like Techniques.
Oh, wow.
Instead of Techniques, they use Traditions. We have another one. Everybody's into this North Face stuff, right? But hey, we live in the Southwest, so we did the same thing, but we put the Southwest, and then you know how they have their little emblem and it has the little lines on it. We changed it a little bit and made it look like the state of New Mexico. So, a lot of other stuff like Wake and Blake's, Blake's is known in New Mexico. What's another one? A real famous one. I don't know if you guys have watched the TV show Reservation Dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So Uncle Brownie, really good friend of mine, Gary Farmer. He came to the fair one day and we printed some shirts for him. And, a couple years later, he called us back and said, hey, I need to get your guys' permission. Can you give me info on, if I could use this shirt? And we're all like, what shirt is that? War Paint. So in the series, when he's driving his lawnmower down, you see him, and he's got the War Paint T-shirt on, and we have that at our shop also. So
awesome.
We try to come up with some really nifty stuff, and each artist has like their own style, and it's crazy because I was watching these guys spray paint, doing all that. I was never an artist until the day they handed me the can. And they said, here, try it out. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Tried it out. It was cool. Then I started getting further into it. And then I started thinking outside the box. Like a couple of my other friends do somewhat of like a 3D type thing, or they'll do like black light. And I was like, well, can't you combine them all? And if you were to go to art school, they would tell you, no, you can't do that. There's no way that's possible. I've done it. I figured it out.
You're gonna have to show us.
So it's really cool as far as like putting old images on parchment and going to a canvas and just, you know, totally just destroying it with just paint. And most people would be all like, oh, that's cool, abstract, whatever. And I'm all, that's just the background's not even done. And then, you know, give me 2 more minutes and I'm pretty sure you've seen these people on the streets with the spray paint and they do all this crazy stuff, you know. But mine is just a one time. You throw it down, spray it, and peel it, and you're like, whoa. So yeah, it's really, really mind blowing. And I was actually thinking about maybe doing something for you guys, you know, as far as a climate change type of deal. You know, I'm starting to get into maybe looking at doing murals, because that's what a lot of the other artists are at the shop. They're muralists. So you know, I'm really grateful for that.
Very popular here.
Yeah, it
Everybody
is.
wants a
I mean,
mural.
there's you go drive down Central everywhere and you see murals, and a lot of these guys that you see their name, I know most of them, and it's pretty wild because I think they're very talented, but then when they look at my art, they're all like, "Whoa, dude, that's like mind blowing." I'm like, "No, I'm not even on your guys' level. You guys are way up there. I'm still down here." But they're like, "No, man, look at that. That looks so cool." And you'll see what I mean when I show you my art. You're gonna be like, "Whoa."
I'm excited.
No, for sure. I actually think I've been at the Trading Post. I think you guys are still getting set up, but Pueblo Action Alliance had one of our
they had
our,
an
like, back
event
to
there.
school drive.
Yeah, and that was a very good turnout. There was quite the line down there.
Yeah, there was we
Giving
got
away.
a lot of supplies out to families. That
Yeah,
was
that was great. And
really great event.
I'm glad that we could actually host that and open up the shop and let a lot of people come through and just see what it is that we had going on there. And, well, obviously to pick up some free supplies, you know, because it does get pretty costly, you know, when it comes to getting school supplies for the kiddos. So we try to help out where we can, you know. So if there's any time you guys might need something too, you know, just get in contact with us. There's like a little area out in the back where they do like we've had a couple of concerts there and stuff.
That's so
You know, like 50, 100 people, not a whole lot. But it's been very good, and just, you know, getting out there in the community and, you know, trying to bring awareness. That's the most biggest thing, is trying to bring awareness that, hey, we're still here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doing the hard work
Yeah.
all the time, every single day, no matter what.
And
Yes,
speaking
sir.
of hard work, I want to transition a little bit to the work that you guys do. So around climate justice and around MMIW, we've heard, you know, a little bit more of maybe, you know, the passions and maybe what the hard work has inspired. I've heard you talk about some of the artwork that has come out of like Standing Rock and some of the other things. But I want to hear a little bit more about, you know, tell me about your work for climate justice, and maybe kind of paint the picture for us of what's at stake back home and like what's driving this fight.
So one of the big things that I do is water protection. If we lose our water, we lose our life. That saying, water is life, is 100% accurate. It's countless thousands of years of indigenous knowledge in one sentence. And so one of the things that we do is we're fighting for Nigi clan to get back their traditional territory. When the treaties were being done through Georgian Bay and beyond, it's a very huge swath of land. They were never signed for or paid for, but they continued to build and build and build and build. And one of the biggest issues that we're facing in Georgian Bay right now, if you guys look up, anyone listening who's interested in Canadian stuff that's going on, it's called the Beach Rights. And it's actually run by 2 allies who are really, really cool guys. And they're fighting for us. They don't want us to lose our waterway and our traditional access and territory. So what's been happening is a lot of cottagers, they will build on the beach. And the law states that they can't have access, ownership access down to the water line. As we all know, water recedes. So they use that to their advantage. And every couple days, they'll have a new rock marking their freaking property line. And so you'll look at these deeds, we pull them up because they're public record, and it'll show, 50 feet away at minimum of like where their property line ends. And yet they'll just keep going into the water, into the water. And so what they've done is they've become really, really aggressive. So I've had instances where I'm walking with my daughter down the beach to go swim down a concession road. So it's like a real road. It's public access. And there are all these little trailways that are public access. They're marked as public. And you go down that public way and you'll have these they act like wild animals. And I know that's really, really harsh, but like they literally will be like, "Ugh!" And they'll like run at you and scream at you, "Get off my property!" And like, it's that Western mentality, that Western lens of ownership and possession. We don't own the land. And that's the biggest difference between indigenous populations and Western populations. They feel that they own the land, whereas we know that we do not own it. We are the stewards to protect it, to take care of it for the next 7. So we're fighting to keep access to that water because historical laws at least in Ontario, are that if you're not using it, you lose access to it. It's like a weird little loophole law. So if they can prove that we're not using that waterway, they own it. And they can, oh, no, look, nobody comes down here. And they think that if they bully us out. So one of the things we did 2 years ago, apologies, is we started plopping teepees along the shoreline, and we called it a mobile heritage center. And we had a cultural camp and a ceremonial camp so that they couldn't legally remove us. And we actually put it right outside of the Indigenous finance minister's home. Because she's one of the ones who stole the biggest plots of land, which is the utmost irony because she's supposed to be an Indigenous finance minister. Of course, she's a settler. And she definitely settled herself on that beach. And she just like keeps encroaching on. So we popped a big one up there and we stayed for about a month. And we just keep trying to push back on them and protect the water because we've noticed a very, very insane decline in our fish populations. And my people, we rely very, very heavily on our fish as one of our main sources of food. It's definitely a primary source. And what we've noticed, I can definitely say from my experience with netting and fishing, the further north you go, the more fish, definitely. But in the southwestern region of Ontario, in the last 8 years or so, I've noticed enough of a decline where I could look down off the docks and there would be these beautiful pools of sunfish and perch and bass. Like you could see all the bass on the bottom. Our water was crystal clear. It was the most beautiful. We have, these ice blue shores. When you think of Canada, you don't think of white sand and blue water. And we had the most gorgeous, gorgeous water. And it's the second deepest and largest freshwater body in the world. And it is rapidly declining. We've noticed that not only are the fish declining and getting sicker, but that the water levels are dropping every single year. And you had mentioned the Rio Grande. That was the very first time I'd seen a dry river, and I teared up. It hit me very, very deep. I was not anticipating that. I knew that it got lower, but I walked the riverbed, and I think that was probably one of the scariest things I've seen because that makes it so much more real. We can have receding, but to see no water.
It's so scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like spooky.
Yeah.
No, it's just like you said. I think the first time I was just driving across the bridge and to see it, I think it just like stopped me like dead in my tracks.
Yeah.
It was a very emotional experience. And to think, also just thinking back to being the descendant of Pueblo revolutionaries, and to know that the entire reason that the Pueblo revolt took place was to restore harmony on the land, and to know that back in 1680, to know that what had happened, and it had brought us to this point of, okay, we're going to defend the land and we're going to restore balance by any means necessary. And to think that that was our ancestors' reaction to years of the settlers were imposing taxes, they were displacing communities, And so we saw that as the appropriate response. And I think of now, if they were able to see the Rio Grande running dry, what would they be called to do? What would, if revolt was the response to imposed higher taxes, what would the response be to our mother waters being completely desecrated and destroyed? And so, I thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It definitely connects to, like you said a little bit ago, if something happens to your waterways up north, it
It'll come here.
definitely affects us downstream.
And people don't even think about like little things. Like, so for example, your rain. Where does your rain come from? It comes from the air and the ground, that moisture, right? So if it's bringing our polluted water, that's being dropped on the Sandia. That snow coming in from Colorado, that's bringing their sickness with it. It's not, yes, we do snow bath and all that, and the snow is very, very sacred, but it's still poisoned. This isn't 40 years ago where you could just go outside and eat the snow anymore. The snow is sick. The water is sick. And if we don't turn things around, we're at that absolutely critical moment in history. And in 20 years, they're either going to have a book that says they turned it around, or it's going to be pictures of what the world used to look like. And we're seeing it in real time. Like I said earlier, we live in a post-apocalyptic world. The Western lens cannot comprehend that sentence because they built this world for themselves. Whereas, like you had said, what were my ancestors doing? What would my ancestors have done? And I remember at the beginning of this, you had said to me that with Trump being the supposed winner, it almost feels like all hope is lost. What are we fighting for? You're fighting for that revolt. This is your revolt. This is our migration. This is your revolt, 100%. And I'm really hoping that a lot of youth are listening and that a lot of youth will pick up that. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be violent or aggressive. It can be something as simple as writing in, even though Congress doesn't want to listen. Make them listen. Write in. Post all the information that you can, the scientific facts, because they will listen to science. And eventually they'll start to maybe hopefully change. Because if we don't really, really begin to unite and fight this together, I'm terrified for my daughter's future. I'm worried for my son's future. I'm worried for my adopted daughter's future. I don't know what will happen in 20, 40 years. I don't know if all of the water will be dry. And that, to me, that is the scariest thing on the planet. The idea of no water. That's it's heavy.
And like y'all are saying, like, it's already desperate times. And like your point, like, what would our ancestors want us to be doing? I'm trying to, like, in my mind, like, connect this like properly and like crank out the words, because it's so complex. But to the point of like talking about the election, it's really interesting to see people feeling like let down or like they're surprised. He's been here.
Yeah.
He's already, like, Trump is already here. Kamala's already here. Being a Democrat or Republican is not gonna.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle, and voting is not the only thing that you can do. So like the young people that are listening need to know that like our ancestors were creative as hell. And that's why revolts happen, because there is a need. And there's like solidarity to be had with our neighbors, but it just needs to be like built up, you know? Those are kind of the feelings I'm feeling around that. Like, it fucking sucks. Everything sucks.
It's fucking scary.
But it's not hopeless because we're still here.
No, and that's the one thing, especially I want to say to Two-Spirit Queer and the youth, we're still here. They tried so hard, like you had mentioned the buffalo, and the saying was, that's one of Saba's great ones that I love. And so the original saying was, kill the Indian, save the man. Kill the man, save the Indian. We're going to still be here. They're not going to be able to eradicate, especially your nations. Your nations are huge, and that blew my mind.
This past year, I've been doing a lot of like traveling in different advocacy work, and I've gotten to know some more northern tribes and like hear some of your stories. And I went to Minnesota recently for ricing season, and like that was such a strange experience, like a Dene out there, like out on the lakes.
That's what I feel here.
Yeah, like it was so funny, just like all the different like tribes teasing each other, like, oh, you're not used to it because you're from the Southwest. But yeah, it's so beautiful. Like also seeing the way communities are so different, and like we have similar paths in our history because of what colonization, many times it's happened, but we suffer from the same things. We have shared values, and it's been so beautiful to like see how others connect to their lands and like what it means to them specifically, because my family aren't like connected to water in the way that like the people I've met recently are connected to water, because our closest water is the San Juan River in Shiprock, and that's not like a main food source, but it's like running water, like it's fueling everything around us. And we can't catfish in there anymore. Like I used to swim in it all the time and like almost get lost, and my nieces and nephews don't get to have that anymore because it'll like make you sick as hell.
Oh, my heart.
And yeah, like I've been expanding a lot, and because I definitely in the Southwest, we're Southwest centric. Like our gentrification is kind of like, people want Adobe looks, like they want the Southwest look. And so everything I've kind of known about being Indigenous has been Southwest, but like it's global.
That's colonization too.
Oh yeah,
though, right?
They want us to think a certain way.
Yeah, even like it's really been interesting being out here. I feel the same way that you felt, meeting the northern relatives. And when I'm here, I realize like how much the North has also in a way fetishized the Southwest. And I was totally not fully cognizant, I guess, of just like how deep the Southwest fetishization can go and how deeply ingrained it is, until I really came out here and I saw, and I was like, oh, whoa. You'll go to like people's homes over there in Canada and you'll see like all those Southwest patterns. But it's like, it's
cowboy.
So, but it's like so typical that and it's so strange to me how normalized it's become to Indigenous people. Like, oh, look at this sweater, for example, with that like, that block pattern on it. And, every single, I have one.
Yeah.
We all have one. But
the Pendleton became ceremony.
Just sacred, make it a sweater. But yeah, it's like all of us have been like enveloped in that little bubble.
Yeah, I gotta break it open.
Yeah, 100%. There's a really cool, I can't remember them for the life of me right now, but I'll look it up for you guys after. But there's actually a company out of Canada fighting against Pendleton. And so they're Indigenous wool blankets done in the old way.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and it's this whole company, and I will do everything I can to remember during this podcast. But
yes,
yeah,
we'll
they
link
make
it.
It is so cool, and I want one of their blankets so hard.
Yes.
And they're cheaper than Pendleton's. Yeah.
That's the best part.
It's probably like 10 times more work too.
Yeah, I was just thinking like when you said that they're done, traditionally, I was just thinking that, and that's a lot of work. I was really privileged to travel certain parts of South America, and in that was able to go to an all-femme co-op where they do weaving, and to hear from them. For some of the colors, I mean, there's like different blues and purples that they use in their ponchos down in Peru. And to hear from them, I mean, it takes months of continuously boiling these berries, of continuously, I mean, weeks and weeks. And, one small mistake and you could lose it all. Yeah. And it's just like you said, just the amount of work that goes into that is always just. Yeah.
And that kind of makes me go right back to our water. Because if we lose our water, so I do traditional medicines, and I have a full-scale apothecary. And for those berries too, those dyes, the old ways, if we lose our water, those are gone in a heartbeat. All the medicines are gone in a heartbeat. Yeah, there is a lot of very drought resistant, especially out here. But for people like me, these aren't my plants. I'm learning slowly, but they're not my plants to use and heal people with and help people with. My plants come from drowning. You know, we sit at 85% humidity where I live. And so, you know, if we taint that ground and that water, there goes our fruit, there goes our seeds.
Yeah.
You know, all of it, it's gone in a heartbeat.
And it's always the indigenous people first.
Oh, absolutely.
Impacted first.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah, 100%. Because they'll always have their backup. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize is like how deep, not in a conspiracy way, but like just how deep the rabbit hole goes with colonization. They will always have a system and that privilege to access that system. Let's look at like Kangen water, for example, those like $500-$600 water filtration tabletop things. I can't afford that shit. You know, I have a life straw. Ooh. Luxury. It does work, by the way.
Ooh, okay.
But I have to use that to drink from my own streams, my own springs. I have to use that. So, like, they'll always have that privilege of, like, oh, well, okay, I can get extra iodine pills, or I can get a big water filtration system for my house, or, you know, solar power, whatever. You know, we'll rig an inverter to a solar power. We'll always have power. We don't even have to have gasoline. Whereas a lot of indigenous populations are stuck in a system that is built to keep them poor, that is built to give them lower education, that is built to break them down from the minute they are born. Yeah. And they know that they did that. But there's so many of us where it's become normalized that we don't even realize we're stuck in that so deep. And it's heart-wrenching as someone who can see both sides there. And you guys obviously can too, but there's a lot of youth that feel stuck. And they're like, you know, it's that whole thing I said, your spirit knows. So even those who are removed, who didn't grow up on reservations, because I didn't grow up on my res. There's those who have been adopted out by white people who are like, super colonized by the system, and it's no fault of their own. They're still 100% indigenous, and their spirit is still fighting that, in a good way, fighting that. But you know, it's a lot. It goes so deep. It goes so deep.
Yeah, it's just makes me think of I was at a conference yesterday for the YUCCA summit at the Sandia Casino, and I got there late, of course. But
Indian time.
I went because some of my homies from CNAY from my last fellowship were there, and they're from out of town. One of them, she's an Anishinaabe. Her long lost family is here in Albuquerque.
Wow.
And so we were both former foster kids, and we do advocacy work now for those populations. And they're on this panel talking about their experiences, and I love Roxy so much, and Alejandra. They're so powerful, and that's another thing. The foster care system.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Oh yeah, we're everywhere. All of us.
And people don't.
The family
realize.
systems that people don't realize what it takes to
Numbers.
support a family.
Yeah.
To keep people healthy and not separate them, and then when you get taken away from your family and put in placements, that's it. It happens in so many different ways.
Oh yeah.
It's really crazy.
And people don't even, it's conversations that a lot of Indigenous don't want to have because they're really hard. It's just like the residential school system. Mm-hmm. So my paternal father, we actually only just reunited. I always knew I was mixed. I didn't know how I was related to this family. I had no clue. I was like, how am I related to them? Who? Right? And so I always knew my mom was Saha, and she's mixed with Mongolian and other stuff. And then as I started to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, I realized that the guy on my birth certificate was not my father. Wow. Through DNA and genetic testing, because I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I had to have genetic testing done. And when it was being done, I requested a specific test because he, unfortunately, was born of incest, the man on my birth certificate. And so, growing up it wasn't exactly boarding school, but it was a boarding Catholic group home. And growing up in that white world and being forced into that white world. And then that's why I speak a lot on that. Your spirit always knows something isn't right. Your spirit will lead you home. And, anin to your two Anishinaabe friends, I do hope that they listen in, and I hope that they have found a lot of healing in that, because it's a heavy thing. It's it'll make or break you 100%.
Yeah. Like knowing where you're from is so powerful, and then being able to grow from your community is like, it just fuels you. And not everybody gets to experience that. I've been really thankful, like now as an adult, to be able to seek that out for myself and reconnect. And yeah, it's really incredible that like how resistant all of us are. Like,
and you don't realize too until you look back, especially when you've had that foster care experience or boarding home or residential school, until you're like able to step back and go, "Ooh, it's heavy."
Yeah. Not that long ago.
No, in Canada, I think it was 1997 was the last residential school. I'm 37. Like, holy shit. It's terrifying.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I'm only down here in Albuquerque, I'm only the second generation in my family out of the residential school era. And I know for you guys, you're still in the first, and in some places still second.
Oh yeah.
And so, I know that's still very fresh. And I think people don't realize that. And when we talk about, the legacy of residential schools, which, luckily has been in, the spotlight a lot more in recent years. But talking about that, I don't think that's, people don't realize how recent this is.
No,
they think that this is, it's been so long, it's all in the past, that kind of mindset. But it's like, no, we are only 2 generations out. Like my grandfather, this is what he experienced. Me and my father were the only 2 that weren't forced to go.
Right. And that alters so many generations to come.
In a real, like, in this, like, in all the ways it affects you.
Yeah.
Like, now that we have like the power to like look at a gene sequence, you can see like the markers on like the aspects of our human being that show trauma, and that gets passed on not just by genetics, but also when we get like seasonal depression.
Yep.
I heard recently, like, this makes so much sense to me, but I could be wrong, but like the pollen, the seasonal things that you're experiencing re-affect you year and year again, and so it reminds you like subconsciously of what you were feeling last time you like felt this cold or you smelled that flower.
We have a term for that: blood memory.
Yeah.
And the water in you remembers too, because water will always remember. So that makes 1,000,000% sense. Yeah
It's ingrained.
Yeah, no, and yeah. I
Right?
like
There's too
that.
much to
That's
say.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've heard about, all of the different work that you all are doing, heard about, the climate justice work. We've heard a little bit about the medicine work that you do. I'd love to hear more about that. I also, recognizing that I press record, I just trying to remember exactly which point, but I at least want to queue up that conversation. We don't have to dive completely back into it, but at least queue that up so it's on
Very
the file
good conversation
to splice that together properly. But yeah, so I can, thank you so much for sharing with us, painting this picture of what's at stake back home, but then also, the tactics that you all are using, and sharing with us some of the successes that you all have had. I think that it's super important for us to not only uplift and focus on all of the negative and the things that we have to fight against, but also, uplift all of the successes that we have across all of our communities, because we're winning, so many fights, so many battles against so many different pipelines, against telescopes, against, across all of our communities, man camps, tar sands, all of these different projects that we've been able to win. I want to hear a little bit more about something that we've brought up a couple of times, but I want to, talk more about missing and murdered Indigenous women. And, I mentioned that this is all the same struggle, that all of these things intersect, that, patriarchy and white supremacy and colonialism, they work together to, enact these cycles of violence and wage war against our communities. So I want, if you can kind of paint that picture for us and, dive into what is a man camp and how does that play into the larger picture of the climate crisis, but then also, cis hetero patriarchy.
How does it affect us, basically?
Exactly.
So to make it really simple, a man camp is when let's say an oil company, they want to extract oil. This is really big in Alberta, actually, and there's a lot of women fighting in Alberta. They will set up literal camps that are men, and there will be anywhere from 100, 200, up to 1,000 men. And the majority of these men are settlers. They are, white. I don't use the term Caucasian because they are not Caucasian. But they will then enact violence on our women. They have the mentality that's kind of floating around right now with Trump, your body, my choice. And we see surrounding every man camp, there is a dramatic statistical spike in either sexual assault, murder, or death. Murder is death, sorry. Murder or women going missing. And they tend to go missing along the 400, the Highway of Tears. And, every single Indigenous person back in Canada, they don't use the numbers for the highway. We just call it the Highway of Tears. And it's the longest highway. I believe it might be the second longest in the world or the longest in the world. I'm not 100% sure there. But, these camps are an absolute hazard. I think that they need to be eradicated. And especially if you go back and watch Yinta, there was a few man camps put up. They were small man camps, but they were man camps nevertheless. And those man camps got the protection of the RCMP and the OPP.
And that's law enforcement, right?
Yeah, so Royal Canadian Mounted Police, actually, fun fact and horrifying fact, everyone knows the RCMP as those guys who are on horses with the red, like the fancy kind of looks British, real colonial. Those are actually the Indian agents of Canada. So there's a couple of really famous paintings of the RCMP when they were first given their power, ripping Native babies from their mother's arms. So they were some of the first agents, like you guys had the Indian agents here.
And like slave patrol.
Yeah, 100%. And so they still have power. And one of the primary places they have power is in the north, in Nunavut. And that's a huge issue unto itself. And that's actually where some of the biggest mines are too, which is very it's pretty obvious. It's all hand in hand. And then OPP is Ontario Provincial Police. And then each province, they have their own police system. And they're all
provincial?
Provincial.
Oh, okay.
Provincial,
I was
sorry.
like, what are they preventing?
No, they're not preventing. They're preventing their other colonial ass nuts from being caught, right? Because it's all hand in hand. They're the ones that give the Starlight Tours. They're the ones that protect the serial killers with the landfills. And they're the ones that don't even look for our women. And, you'll see on the news, and it happens here too, a white lady goes missing when she's out jogging and the whole world is in tears. Lacey Peterson, rest her soul, of course. But when Lacey Peterson went missing, the whole world stopped. And it was this huge thing. And they brought they brought justice for Lacey. But when it's one of ours, our two-spirit, our women, especially in our queer community, because those are the most vulnerable, nobody stops. They just go, oh, it's another statistic, another number. And it doesn't change. And that's why we're fighting that. We're trying to continue to bring that awareness out. So with the landfill back in Winnipeg, I'm not on the front line. My brother, he's on the front line. Hello, Ben. He's a badass little warrior. This has actually brought him back to his community. So he's Siksika Nation. And he was another who was adopted. And he knew who his family was, but he couldn't reconnect for the longest time. But being part of these camps and protesting has put him in a place where he's more in touch with his community than ever. And so he's their firekeeper. Wow. And so he's been living in the landfill for just over a year now with another brother named Trey, who's one of the warriors back home as well. And then we have Melissa and George, who are kind of the ones who started this whole movement of Search the Landfill. And if you just Google that hashtag, you'll find everything for Search the Landfill. But we have, 4 confirmed bodies, sisters, in that landfill. The police refused. We knew exactly where they were. Like people had found parts. And, I can't say who found what, but just parts. Which leads to, obviously, there's something right there. And people, our own community, because they wouldn't do anything, the police refused to let us in or anybody in. We had community members show up with hazmat suits in Winnipeg and ventilators and all of the necessary PPE, willing to go in and dig through people's trash in this landfill and give our sisters the dignity that they deserve and bring their bodies home. And, so we have a new premier in Canada called Wab Kinyu. That's his name. And he is Indigenous. And it's actually one of our first Indigenous in the government in Canada. So it's kind of a big deal. And we were kind of wary. We were very nervous because we've seen, example, Chief and Council, right? So we were kind of like, oh, is he going to stay true to his word? Is he going to really be for the people? And he did stay true to his word, and they've just broken ground and built a camp, and they're not allowing any outsiders come in and do this work, from what I understand. There may be, for legal reasons, some people who can operate like the heavy equipment and all that, but they're doing the search now. Wow. And it's being Indigenous led, which is such a breakthrough for Canada. And for even here in the States, any Indigenous community, because, we're always the ones out there looking for ours, or training dogs to look for ours. Like, it shouldn't be that way. It should be completely the opposite. It should be, we should all be like a Lacey Patterson, sorry. The world should stop. The world should listen and bring all of our missing relatives home, because there's a high number of men as well. And it's sad. It's really, really, really messed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for speaking on that. Mm-hmm. It's really just, every single Indigenous person has a story. Yeah. That's in itself needs to be like a wake up call for people to give a shit. Yeah, it's really awful. But we talking about it is gonna do so much. Mm-hmm. Making sure people are aware of what's happening and the place that is happening most in your communities. Yeah. Warning people, because the perpetrators, in all senses, cops, the government, they're not incompetent. No. They can do it. Yeah. They don't want to.
Yeah, and it's proven over and over again. With I use Lacey as an example because that's a more recent one. Mm-hmm. Or there was another girl, I don't remember her name, and it's very unfortunate what happened to her, but she went missing. And it was somewhere in one of the deserts. And, the internet, it was unbelievable watching it unfold in real time. But the internet, everyone became a sleuth. They figured out that her boyfriend or something had done it to her. And they brought justice for that woman. And she was a white woman, and when it's our women, you hear, oh, well, they were probably drunk. Oh, they were probably on drugs. Oh, they were out partying, or they're doing this. Or you
don't hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah, or you don't. Yeah.
A lot of times you do not hear about it. Like the statistics that we have of these horrible things happening, it's the most that we can account for. Mm-hmm. There are things behind doors that don't get the light of day. And so that's why, this work is so important. We got to be the people that we needed. Got to be the people, got to be the voices that don't get to be heard.
Because, you got to remember we're the next elders. Yeah. Right? So any youth that are listening to this, maybe one of us 4 will have that honor of being one of their elders. So we have to be that person that we needed, because now we're at this time. I don't know how old you guys are, But, you know, I'm watching elders back home. They're passing away now. It's happening. So we're losing them. You know, we're the aunties now, you know, and then we're going to be the kokums, and, you know, we're going to get old, and, you know, hopefully things will be different then. And I'm hoping that one thing that I've noticed at my age is that people are less afraid to speak now. You know, when we look at, like when we do ECM events back in Canada, Every Child Matters, a lot of those elders are very afraid to speak. A lot of them, you'll hear their voices tremble when they speak in their language. Then there's the odd one that will smile, and their head will come up, and their spirit will like, whoosh, and it'll just change. And then you'll see the nervous ones kind of sit up a little bit more. So that's what we're doing right now for that youth and for the other people who are out there feeling like, oh, what am I fighting for if Trump won? And, you know, look at, they're just still putting in these pipelines, and they're still doing this. And we're being that voice that's going to make their spirit hear that call, you know. So that goes back to what you had said. It's not hopeless.
No, absolutely. We've definitely done a lot of talking about pain and about trauma, and really about, you know, harm that's being inflicted both on our land and to our women and to our communities. I want to shift a little bit because I had mentioned that I did want to hear more about this, and I'm just want to hear a little bit and talk a little bit about healing. I want to hear, you mentioned the different medicinal work that you do, and so I'd love to hear more about that.
So I'm not appointed a medicine woman as of yet. There are people that miscall me that. But my work is to help people heal. So I've always felt very, very connected to the land, especially to the native plants. And I'm neurodivergent, so one of my special interests is medical and plants and rocks. The rocks is the stereotype. And so I would go for these really long walks. It started when I was a kid, but it got really, really intense in 2018. In 2018, unfortunately, I did face immense loss due to how the system is built, straight up racism. My son was killed. I was 6 months pregnant, and I went to the hospital in preterm labor, and they refused to help me. So as a result, my son passed away. Then they infected me with invasive strep, and thankfully, somehow I fought through it. Amazing midwives. If my midwife, she listens to you guys, so huge shout out. She'll know exactly who I am speaking about this. She saved my life. And so she had a massive farm, 100 acres of land. She is a settler, and she's very like, I am a settler. This is not my land. And so what she does is anyone who's Indigenous has free access.
Wow.
Because she knows it's not her territory. And so she, after our sessions were done, because legally, she can't invite me when we're client, when everything was said and done, she was like, do you want to come to my farm? And I was like, okay. Okay, weird lady, like, sure. But I loved her right away. I loved Leda. I adored her. And, but I went out there, and one of her big goals, which really shocked me as a mixed Indigenous woman, her goal was to eradicate any non-native invasive species.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
God.
She had dedicated 2 years, and a lot of that time I spent with her eradicating anything that was non-Indigenous. The only 2 plants that remain are quince bush and I forget what it's called, but there's another one. It's a flower that's it shouldn't be there, but she has it contained. Mm-hmm. And then she started a medicine garden for the local Indigenous people with permission. So she grew huge, it's like a half acre of sage. And she grew a half acre of sweetgrass.
Oh my God.
And she did tobacco, and she and I started corn seed saving. So that's how the plants kind of began for me, more on a really deep level. So I began to walk the property, and she would walk with me as a midwife, and she's an activist as well. And she'd be like, oh, pick that up and put it in your mouth. I'd be like, oh, what the fuck? But she'd be like, just put it in your mouth. Taste it. What does it taste like? And it was borage, my first plant. And borage actually tastes like an ice cold cucumber.
Oh.
It's a really weird plant. So then she explained the medicinal property of the borage. And then it became, the European name is verbenium, but cramp bark. It's a traditional Anishinaabe medicine, and it's for the uterus. And it's a cleanser. And then I learned that the flower that the queen claimed, the trillium flower, was actually an abortifacient.
Oh,
But please, if anyone is listening, do not attempt to use trillium flower as an abortifacient, because you can actually seriously harm yourself if you don't know how to use it. So as that evolved, first it was like, how do I heal myself? Because you can't help anybody if you're sick. So I had Ehlers-Danlos. I was, recovering from invasive strep. I was in very, very deep grief. And a lot of us don't work with things when we're grieving or we're sad or we're angry. We'll put those things down and walk away from them. So I would just walk the bush and I would draw something out, and bit by bit, I learned and I learned and I learned. I don't know all the plants. I have thousands of species to learn. But then it became, okay, how do I help somebody not have pain anymore? What can I do traditionally that's been proven to work? Mm-hmm. So it started with pain management, especially for my Ehlers and recovering from that invasive strep. And then it became, okay, how do I help with depression? Because then COVID hit, and COVID affected so many people, and we lost so many people during that pandemic due to depression and hopelessness. And, so it was like, okay, how do we improve their mood? How do we safely help these people who don't have access? That was my big thing, because healthcare is growing by the day inaccessible in Canada. So we have health coverage, but you're going to wait a month to see your doctor, if not longer. It doesn't matter the situation. You could go to the ER and be left to die. Like, they had an elder, and it's made like national news. She was entering her journey home. For those who may not know that term, she was passing away. They put her on the floor, and she was like curled up like a baby. And she died on the floor, like, because they couldn't give her a bed because our healthcare system is so damaged. And so in America too, the healthcare system here is so hard. And especially if you're Black, Indigenous, or any POC, our level of care is way down here compared to that privilege, And so it was, okay, how do I get access to people that's not profiting? Because we're never supposed to profit off of medicine. So I charge for the bottles that the medicine goes into and the hours it takes to process. So like, for example, I do like a 5,000 milligram CBD. It's $20. I just want people to make sure I can keep making this medicine. If I'm out in the bush in the height of the winter is when our cramp bark is ready, the berries. It's also a high bush cranberry. So it's one of our winter foods. And so I'll pick those berries at the height of the winter. So I'm out there in hip deep snow, trudging, dragging through, because it's forest and open fields. There is no plowing up in those areas. They only plow the roads and the driveways. So, those ones are like $13. And that's the maximum I can charge, that I can make sure I can keep bottling this stuff and making sure that people have access to traditional wellness, because there's so many people that have lost that connection to the land, especially due to colonization. And having those traditional foods like the rice or the fish brings you back to the way your spirit's meant to be. It's just like when you guys eat something that's traditional for you, there's a feeling that comes with that food. And that's why we say food is medicine. Plants are medicine. All of it is medicine for our spirit and for our body. It's not just something that we put in our mouth to get a couple calories.
Yeah,
People
it's not
don't
something
realize.
you get at the pharmacy.
No.
It's holistic. It's for your whole being.
Right. But it's so interesting too, on the mention of pharmacy, if you start to break down Western medicine, how much of it was stolen from Indigenous.
Yeah.
So much. When you look at the formulas of a lot of these antidepressants, they're actually very similar, chemically speaking, to certain plants. But it's just a synthesized version. Now, granted, don't get me wrong. There is a time and a place for a lot of these medicines. I've been on them myself. But I don't want them to just take that medicine and synthesize it. I want them to actually.
It's kind of another, like, not extractive, but like
But it is.
dysfunctional
Yeah.
system
For
as
sure.
well, you know, the
Oh,
medical
yeah.
system, and with medications.
Oh,
Because,
100%.
yeah, that's really an interesting thought of like, yeah, because the traditional medicines that like our bodies are like would be used to and like would
Yes.
react to better naturally, right? It can be abundant, and like, yeah, you're not supposed to like take the whole thing.
Right.
You like you're never supposed to take the whole thing. It's not going to keep growing if you don't take the whole
Yeah.
if you take the whole thing. Yeah, one of my like family's medicines is the like coda plant. It's like a type of weed that we brew into a tea, and it's so delicious.
He picked me some.
Of that one.
And I was playing with it because like making
Pueblo tea,
tinctures and
Navajo
stuff.
tea.
Yeah. It is a very unique flavor.
It is, and
It's
that one
beautiful.
is a pain reliever as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
See? That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I didn't know that. That's why he keeps saying I need the tea then. He keeps saying you need that tea, you need that tea.
Oh yeah, all the tea.
Really cool. Yeah, I tried to make a tincture and I found this really fascinating. So 99% of tinctures that I've attempted were successful. That one does not want a tincture.
Oh,
It does not want to extract at all.
That's really
It did tint a little bit red, but it would not extract. No matter, I tried steam extraction, I tried a cold extraction, I tried just kind of letting it sit for 3 months. Nothing. It does not. It has to be used the old way.
Weird.
And I wonder if that's the connection to, even though there's disconnect here for Indigenous people as a whole, there's still a very, very deep connection that has not been lost. And it's something I, from the North, I really admire that about you guys. It's very, very beautiful. You have managed to hold on to some very deep things here. And I can't help but wonder if those medicines are that way because of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate how you said too, and I think one of my biggest issues with Western medicine is, like you just said, is just this thought of we can just take.
Yeah.
Because that, especially when it comes to the medicines that we use, it's never something that we take. There's always protocols, and there's always, there's always asking, there's always offering. It's never we just take. And I think that's one of my biggest issues. Like you said, is a lot of these medicines are like based off of Indigenous knowledge, but it's like it's tainted in this way that then
Yeah.
yeah.
And like, if you look at the greatest example is like New Age wellness,
Oh yeah.
right? And so like
Not
you
the
go
white
into
sage.
fuck, I raise a ruckus every single time. I actually got Spirit Halloween in Canada to remove all white sage because I would not stop.
Congrats.
When I see that, that's like, like it's fighting words for me. But like when you look at like health centers, health stores, right? Like Vitamin and Wellness and all that shit. And you walk in there and you'll see like the fucking prices. They have made it like completely inaccessible to anyone outside of their privileged little bracket.
Yeah.
And not only that, like they are bottling our medicine 100%. And like they don't want to believe our words. This is the absolute irony, right? So they don't want to listen to us. They want to silence us. They want to dress like us and use our sage and cleanse their house and all that. They say that we're full of shit and we're crazy and we're savages and all of these stereotypes. But then they turn around and they bottle our medicine and sell it back to us for like 40, 50, 60, $100 a pop.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I'll just go pick it.
Yeah.
I'll just go pick it.
Go around the corner, find the bush.
Well, that's the thing though. They don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
They have no idea. We had someone show up on the farm. That's a great example of they don't know how to harvest. And they it was saved before I say the next sentence, but they decimated the mother bush to the white sage.
Wow. Fuck.
They didn't know to cut. And they literally a wild animal grabbed that whole bush and ripped it out of the ground, the roots.
Oh my God.
And then they tried to make bundles, and it was very obvious that it was non-indigenous. Like fuck, it was so bad. But she came back, and she grew twice as hard the next year, and now it's like a half acre of sage. A few years later, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So it's really cool. But yeah, fuck, they have no idea what they're doing.
I love hearing stories of medicines and because it's so personal.
It is. It's intimate.
Yeah, it's very intimate.
Yeah. When I'm out there, it's not just, oh, look, I keep using cramp bark as an example just because it's the quickest one that comes to my brain. I'm not like, oh, this is really cool. I'm going to pick this berry. It's more like, wow, this berry has healed countless people with a uterus, because it's not just women with a uterus, and it's helped them. Or that trillium flower. How many people with a uterus did it save from being in a situation? Because back then, from what I understand, and if anybody listens to this and can write comments, please expand on this knowledge if you have it. But abortions were used in times of great necessity, kind of how they're used today. But it was like, let's say they knew that there was a really heavy winter and the baby would not thrive. They would abort, or if the mother was a sickly mother or the two-spirit person couldn't have that baby, abort, logical thinking. It wasn't like, Trump's making it out to be, right. and I can't help but think like, how many people did that plant save? Or when, it was rampant in Canada because it was illegal at one point, abortion. How many secret little knowledge keepers,
true, likely
indigenous, saved probably white women and POC's lives with that flower?
Yeah.
Or how many times was, I can't say what it is because I don't want someone to pick it and use it, but there's a specific plant that produces a gorgeous red dye if used correctly, but if used another way, it'll kill you. And it was put on arrows. So, how many times was that plant turned into something for the winter and then used to protect the home, right? Like it's such
badass.
It's history and it's such a vital part of who we are as Indigenous people. Because of that, it goes right back to why we're fighting for our planet. It's that connection to the land. It's that connection to the water. It's that connection of we are put here to be the stewards. We're not put here to say, I own this. We're here to make sure that for my people, we say the next 7 generations, I want to make sure that the next 7 generations are good, that they're solid, that we keep doing that healing work, that we keep going back and making sure shit's going to be okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but let's just make sure it's going to be okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that was actually a really beautiful line to
Thank
kind
you.
of start to wind this down. I want to thank you for everything that you've shared
Thank
with
you.
us, for all the vulnerability, the stories, the knowledge, the wisdom, just everything.
Thank you.
Of course. And before we finish today's podcast, I do want to ask, is there anything that our listeners can do to support you? Is there a place that they can go to find your work? Is there any calls to actions back home that would be beneficial for us to help with? And just really plug anything that you want.
I'm going to do one for Darlene Gomez. She works for New Mexico. She is the leading MMIW advocate and lawyer. So if there is anyone who's in distress or needs help in advocacy, Darlene Gomez would be the place to go. That's definitely a huge one, especially for our vulnerable populations. And then if you really want to fight the good fight and support, search the landfill. Keep supporting that landfill movement. My brother Ben is constantly posting. The camp needs support. They're doing this as volunteers. All activists, we don't get paid for this. So,
Even though Trump says we do.
Right? I'd be rich.
I'm still waiting for a check from the Clinton Foundation. For
Yeah,
2016.
shit, there's
most
mine.
definitely.
But they always need stuff like clean drinking water, wipes to stay clean. Batteries are huge things. So they do have like an Amazon and a GoFundMe, which I'll write down and give you all of that. And then the beach rights, supporting our water. If you're unsure, how do I support the water? Honestly, just find your local collective. If you Google, things are going to come up. This one is a great collective, and I'm sure that you guys could very easily pump out that information to folks who want to fight on their home territory. Remember that even though there's a border, we never had borders. So your fight is our fight in the north. You know, and it goes both ways there. Though we're different tribes, we're one people, and we have to have that unity. We need to come back to each other and have all of those exchanges continue to happen. And then, you know, I have to do the Arrowsoul Trading Post, and I'm Opulence Apothecary. I do ship worldwide, and I'm actually the only woman in my family. I'm a shell and bone carver. So I actually do buffalo bone, and I do all the traditional. I'm bringing it all back. I do like the big shells and, you know, the rounds, and the bigger the better. And I do seal work in trade with the Inuit. And actually, that would be a big one. So one of the really, really big issues is Nunavut. They have some of the biggest mines and mancamps, and countless women are assaulted out there, and the suicide rates are actually the highest for any Indigenous population. And we just had an Inuk man murdered by our CMP. He was shot dead. It was two twins. I'm not sure the status of the other brother, but he was on life support. And, you know, they aren't listening to Inuit voices out there. So that would be a really big one. And there's a lot of urban Inuit identity projects scattered kind of throughout Canada. I'm not sure about out here, but there probably is somewhere in the States, urban Inuit identity projects. And they're really big on supporting Inuit peoples, because they currently have the genocide and the colonization is very intense. Like, they're paying over $100 for a case of water. And if you look at the numbers, like the prices, it's horrific. And I just lost a very, very dear friend. He had a heart attack due to stress. He was an Inuk man. Joe and his brother committed suicide 1 year prior because he felt so hopeless in the Arctic, in his home, on his land. He thought that he would never get assisted housing. He thought that he would never get a good job. And unfortunately, he took his own life. And that's kind of the common ground in the North. We're losing too many too fast in the North. But yeah, that and Arrowsoul Trading Post, the store that Orlando's a co-owner of, Indigenous Art and Luxury. It's a gallery with like phenomenal artists, and I'm honored to be a part of that one. We do have better hours now, but kind of just call any of our numbers, and if someone's around, they can definitely take people on a private tour of the shop and open it for them. So
Amazing. Anything else that you want to plug for?
Skoden Arts.
with a Z.
That's the one company that I owned. You know, talking about my friends that got me into the art. All these graffiti writers, you have to come up with some kind of catchy name or something that you want to write. And I was always saying, let's go then, Skoden. And then I thought about it like, I wonder what it would be like if I did it backwards. So then I started writing it backwards, Need Docs. And a lot of people are like, hey, I see your stuff over here. Oh my gosh, pretty wild. So yeah, Skoden Arts, it's coming along, and you know, doing a lot of stuff also with Arrowsoul Trading Post, and you know, just trying to link up with different Indigenous artists, and you know, getting their perspective of artwork. How do they look at it? You know, like how do you come up with these prices? Because you know, like a lot of people, you know, when I sell my art, I'm really selling it for like really below way what it's for. So if you know about ledger pieces, like the Northern Plains style, one ledger piece goes anywhere from like $500 to $2,600
And more.
or more. Yeah. And me, I'm only charging like sometimes I charge $40, sometimes I charge $200. It just varies on the actual contents of what's on the actual document and what year. So that's got a lot to do with it. Some I have that are priced a lot cheaper, and people are like, "Well, it's the same thing." And it's like, no, it's not. You got to kind of like see what's written on that document. I have a lot of justice of the peace documents that I haven't even messed with yet.
And
But,
boarding school.
Yeah, boarding school. Boarding school was a really big one. I only had like a few of those pages, so I tried my best to, put the appropriate images or story, if you want to say, I guess. And like my art, it does tell a story. Like you wonder what were those people thinking back then? Did they really want their picture to be taken?
Yeah.
What's going through their mind?
It's that whole fetishization.
What would happen if that was me there? I mean, what would I be thinking? At this time. Mm-hmm. So just getting different people's aspects and explaining their art. And when I show you my art, I'm going to show you more than one aspect of art, because most artists are only going to show you one. Whatever you see with your eyes, I'm going to totally blow your mind. And as I could see and hear, you guys got quite a bit of art in here.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really crazy is, like, when I look at art, I can already see things that are going to do things. Like, I know for sure that one will do something wilding out.
Mm-hmm. That one's a good one.
That one's amazing.
Yeah, and just using different kinds of light. That's another thing. Black light, LED lights, and the one thing I always ask artists, can you change the color on your canvas? And a majority of them will tell me, no, you can't. I'm all like, yes, you can. And they're all like, no, how? And then I'll pull up a little video of one of my art pieces where I have it where it goes through all the different light spectrums. Ooh. So like the LED lights, you go to a show, right? And you have all these lights blinking, right? Do you ever think about looking down at your shirt and seeing all the color or whatever, and it looks like it's moving? Or if you look at somebody in the distance and you see their shirt changing, like, how is that doing that? Mm-hmm. It's the light source. So I try to combine all those into one thing and just throw it all at you.
That's so amazing.
In one shot. It's pretty wild because, they're black light activated, they're LED activated, they're 3D. So, and then with the 3D thing, there's two types of 3D. So blue and red, right? One eye is prone to see blue and one eye is prone to see red. What happens if you were to switch it around? Would it do anything? Yeah, it sure does. So it's wild. And then there's depth layer glasses, and then they got other types of 3D glasses. There's like a green color, and green and yellow, I believe. So it lets you see those spectrums of light. So when you put these on, there's certain things that are like gonna be way in your face or way in back, and it lets you just see the layers. So the whole thing of becoming an artist and doing what I do is, and then not only that, but the work, coming up with all these different songs and whatnot for all these different events that I do. And it's, I don't know what it is that draws me to do it, but I just know that it has to get done. So, when I'm always asked to do certain things, I'm pretty much, for the most part, I go out and do it, and it's taken me to different venues, different places. I've been to California, Nevada, different parts of the United States just to go sing for the people.
Nice.
Or either to go show off the artwork and kind of let them know. And the biggest thing about the whole art thing and our shop is the actual name, Arrowsoul Trading Post. Well, we're all Arrowsoul artists because we use spray paint. And, well, yeah, a lot of it comes from our soul. But if you really think about it, back in the day, you used to watch all these Westerns, and you see the trading post, right? Did you ever see a native own a trading post? No, it was always the white man, but the natives were working in the trading post, right? So now we kind of took that and turned it around and said, hey, you know what? We have a trading post now. So that's what we're trying to get at and, bring out and let people know, yeah, we're still here. And now we own some of those things, and it's kind of wild how that all works. But yeah.
Not only that, it's intentionally spelled arrow, as in like a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And
Spelled
soul, as in my
ARROW.
spirit, which like when I first saw the name, I was like, that is so brilliant. Because our warriors would use,
Yes.
a lot of arrows.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So,
And I hope some of the listeners get a chance to come on down and come, check out the shop.
Yeah.
Who knows what you're gonna find, or who
See some
knows
amazing artwork.
who knows who you're gonna meet up with too. That's the
Yeah.
craziest of things,
In
because we have
Albuquerque.
people that just come through. Really good friend of mine, Defi. Every once in a while, he comes into the shop. But if you know about Defi and you know him, he's really out there. He's almost like in the mainstream of rapping and being an indigenous rap artist. And last night we went to a powwow, and he was actually performing, and I did a piece of him. I was just, let's try it. Let's see if it's going to work out. And it actually came out really good. And I only did one. Wow. And when we were at the powwow the other day, I was like, here, dude, this is for you. And I also have one with Leonard Peltier. Have another one with Keith Sokola. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to meet up with Keith. But if we do, I'm looking forward to, blessing them with a piece of artwork. It's
Hell
great.
yeah.
And I just want to say thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you.
And it's very important that these types of things do get out there and, get out. And I hope the listeners, take a little bit of time and reflect and think about, what would it be like back in the day?
Mm-hmm.
How could I make a difference? What could I do to change the world for the better?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
thank you
been
so
ama-
much.
amazing.
Well, thank you for having us, and thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's heavy work, and it can be really depressing at times. And I keep going back to what you had said, but it's because it hit me in the spirit. A lot of people are probably wondering, like, oh, what's the point of going on? And the point is so that we can show that we're still here. At the end of the day, we're still here. They're not going to be able to get us all. If we manage to get away from the residential system, what's it going to be like in 50 years when we're on the forefront, finally? I believe it can happen. I believe that our youth are going to make sweeping changes. I'm seeing it in real time. 20 years ago, I never would have even fathomed that a woman could even run for president, or that we would see so many indigenous people, even though the government sucks. And I'm very wary, no offense to anyone who steps into power like that. It goes back to the whole chief and council thing.
Don't you know I'm on console?
But, the fact that these changes are happening shows hope for us on the front lines doing that work. It shows that, there are people that are willing to listen. It's just, it may not be all of them right now, but there are people that are going to listen. And I want to state just one more time, if there's anybody struggling with mental health, there's actually a series of lists, which I'm going to leave here today. They are non-police calling mental health help. So they will not call the police on you. They will make sure that you're okay and give you the aid and the help that you need, especially for Indigenous and any BIPOC as a whole. And then in Canada, and it's accessible to anybody, and it's primarily for Two-Spirit women and queer, Talk for Healing. It's a woman-led Indigenous collective where you can actually just text. and receive mental health help. And I've used, I have a New Mexico number now, so I've used it, and I was still able to receive some help. And they're a non-police calling line as well. But there is help out there. There's no shame in wanting help. There's no shame in reconnecting. There's no timeline for any of that work. You'll always be healing, but just be patient with yourself and allow that work to slowly happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for your time and for joining us. Hope to be able to work together soon and continue
Yeah, that'd
supporting
be
each other.
awesome.
Because, yeah, like everything that you just said, the work is less depressing and more joyful when we're able to connect with each other and realize that
Yes.
we're not alone in this.
Yeah.
That we have relatives all the way up the coast and into
Yep.
these northern territories, and then all the way down south as well.
Yeah.
And that we are all united in this struggle.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much. If there's anything else y'all want to add, but if not,
I'm golden.
Cool. And thank you for listening to the Yapping with YUCCA podcast.